One thing that you mentioned was replacing shoes. And so I know that you just mentioned replacing the kind of softer sole. It's about every year or so. What would you say as far as like just a typical like walking shoe or running shoe? Maybe they might be a little bit different. I do get that question a lot about replacing shoes. And so I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on that. Is it kind of like a mileage thing? Is it kind of a time thing? I know it depends on probably how much you use it, but what do you kind of say about that as far as replacing shoes?
It really depends on the brand and the type of shoe that it is, right?
Okay.
Obviously, with running shoes, they say every 6 to 8 months, but that's if
Okay.
you're running in them, let's say 4 or 5 times a week, right? That's how quickly the foam will probably compress. And as it bottoms out, it becomes harder. So there's less cushioning effect from the footwear. Now, if you go with like something like this here, obviously these shoes you can probably wear a lot longer. Midsole material is either, I'm not sure if it's thermoplastic rubber with this one particularly, but it's a harder midsole material. So obviously this is going to last you a lot longer, and you can replace the heels on these as well, right? So over time, if the heel wears down and starts to like maybe throw your ankle to the side too much, because we naturally come down in this supinated, state at the back of the heel right here, unless you have a significant amount of, inward rotation and pronation, right? Then most of the time you'll wear out the outside heel. And as that wears out, you probably want to go visit a cobbler or a shoe repair guy just to help you fix it up and straighten it out again, right? So that's definitely something you can do to maintain the lifespan of the shoe. I wouldn't recommend that for a running shoe because you're really not going to get the cushioning back if you go to a shoe repair shop.
It'll just get harder and okay.
The firmer midsoles, you can definitely do that. And those ones are probably going to last you, could be 2 to 3 years. In some cases, we have some clients that wear them for 5 years and that's fine, right? It really depends on your level of activity too, right? Because if you're only walking, 1 day a week, your shoe's probably going to last you a long time. If you walk a lot more often, then it's gonna wear down faster, and it's just kind of comes down to the level of activity. And in running shoes, every year probably. If you're a walker, if you're a runner, 6 to 8 months, right? And then if you have multiple pairs of shoes, so if you get multiple pairs of shoes, because one of the things you got to keep in mind when you have a running shoe like this, the midsole material is going to compress the more you wear it. But it has also the ability, if you leave it sitting, by itself for like 24 to 48 hours, the midsole material will bounce back to kind of its original state. So if you have a couple of pairs that you can rotate, you'll get more life out of these shoes than if you continue to use the same shoe day in and day out, right? So that's one way to kind of extend the lifespan of this type of footwear without you having to replace it as often. And the softer the foam or the lighter the shoe, probably the more often you'll have to replace it. And the reason being is because most of the time, the lighter the shoe, the more air they blow into these midsole materials, right? Because if you look at EVA under a microscope, you'll see kind of like little pockets that look kind of like a beehive in a sense. And those pockets, what happens with those pockets is as they compress, eventually they won't bounce back to their original state. And that's when the cushion starts to dissipate. And I find the softer the sole, usually the faster that does wear down. And then a lot of shoes nowadays, also one of the things that you got to keep in mind is that, this one has rubber inserts in here, so the rubber obviously protects the midsole material from breaking down too fast. But a lot of shoes, they're now taking out rubber components and then add a little bit more rubber to the actual midsole material. But they can make the shoe wear out quite a bit faster. So it really depends on the footwear. And then keep in mind, one more thing I want to add to this as well, is that if you wear the shoe and all of a sudden you get pain that, you experience pain that you had before but didn't have, when the shoe was brand new, most likely it's time to change the shoe.